Hey, my Gen X brothers and sisters out there. So, lately I've been thinking a lot about a very specific pressure that a lot of us feel. And you might be able to relate to this. Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm a Canadian mother, grandmother, and retired teacher and counselor. And I've been dealing with some family stuff that I think a lot of you can relate to. I'm retired. I've been retired since 21, and I do spend time looking after my grandkids, but I also have a mother with Alzheimer's, and I'm the only sibling out of three of us that still live in the same province as my mom. So I become the go to person to look after my mom for most things. My brother does come in when it's time to move her from one place to another. He's been just an absolute godsend for that. And he's a great person to phone and bounce ideas off, that sort of thing. But because I'm the one that's closest to her, I'm about 2 hours from her, I am the default child to look after her. And so this is what's called the sandwich generation when we are looking after grandkids or children, because sometimes they're still in our basements, and elderly parents. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you. There are days when I'm so grateful that I'm in this position, that I'm retired. I'm only 58, and that I can be looking after my grandkids the way I can. And that I'm also in a position to be looking after my mom. But then there are days when I just feel so divided and guilty because I don't feel like I'm doing as good a job as I should be. And the responsibility can sometimes be a little overwhelming. And I know I am not alone in this exhaustion. I started looking, and there's 16 million Americans who are dealing with this, and 1.8 Canadians who are in the exact same situation as me. And I started wondering, like, why are there so many of us Gen Xers dealing with this sandwich generation? And I found out that it's because, well, people are living longer, for one thing. So my mom is in her 90s. People had children later on in life. So it makes sense that their younger kids haven't flown the coop yet, and they're having to start looking after their elderly parents. And then those young adults that we have are still going to college, university. There's those costs, the economy the way it is. So they're coming home and living in our basements, and therefore we're financially on the hook for them longer than traditionally has been. So it turns out that a lot of Gen Xers are actually carrying three roles at this point: caregiver, parent and or grandparent, and financial supporter. I even found out that there is another term that I hadn't heard of yet, and this was called the club sandwich generation. This is for people who have aging parents, adult children, and grandchildren all at the same time. And all of this responsibility is truly leading to burnout, exhaustion, huge amounts of guilt because we just don't feel like we can do it all. Many caregivers, they're trying to juggle work, at least 30 hours a week of caring for either their grandkids, their kids, or their parents, appointments, medical appointments, especially for their elderly parents, all the paperwork. I have done hours and hours and hours of paperwork for my mother. And of course, dealing with their finances, making sure that all their bills are being paid, their taxes are being done. I know that my brother and I thought that we were going to end up having to pay a lot per month to look after our parents in their elderly years because they were farmers and they didn't have pensions and so forth. I do have to be very aware and acknowledge that we are so fortunate because we live in a province and a country in which we have systems in place to help people like my mom. She has late stage Alzheimer's. So she's in a wheelchair, and there is just absolutely no way that I would be able to look after her in my home. But to be honest with you, she's in that stage where she needs to be in a care facility that has 24/7 doctors and nurses. So we're past that stage of her being able to live with me anyway. She needs hydraulic systems to assist her in terms of showering and using the toilet and things like that. But we are so lucky because the costs that are needed in order to cover mom's medical needs, they're covered by her old age security, by her Canada pension plan. She also gets about $200 a month from the veterans benefit because my dad served in World War II. And then she also, because she doesn't make any other income, she gets what's called a GIS, or a guaranteed income supplement. And that's for people who make under a certain amount per year. So with all of these together, they actually cover the costs of her care facility. So at least I don't have to worry about the financial aspect of her care. But I also know that this is not the same situation for everybody. And man, the costs for medications and maybe home visits or home modifications if they're still living at home, like changing the house out to make it wheelchair accessible, changing the bath facilities, having those chairs that go up and down on the stairwell. The costs just add up like crazy. And then, of course, there's the emotional load. And if any of you have a parent who is dealing with a form of dementia like Alzheimer's, you know what I mean when I talk about the long goodbye. My father passed away in a farming accident, and one day he was gone. And that was a huge shock to the system, and it was horrible. My mom, I've been watching her deteriorate over 10 years. And this last couple of years has been especially hard because she's to the point where she doesn't recognize us anymore. And now her physicality is deteriorating. So she's now in a wheelchair. She can't toilet herself. She can't eat herself. When she speaks, it's garbled. I don't understand anything she's saying. And there are visits when basically I just turn music on my cell phone, put it on her lap, and just let her listen. And that's it. She never opens her eyes to say hello or even acknowledge that I'm there. So that is really hard on the heart. So I'll spend a day with mom doing that and talking with their doctors, having meetings, talking about her goals of care. And then the very next day, I'm at my grandkids' place at 7:30 in the morning and caring for them all day while their parents are working. So it's like we definitely are sandwiched between the two generations. And I know how fortunate I am because I have that system in place, but I can't help but wonder what happens to people who don't. Like, are they having to quit their jobs in order to work at home full time or to look after their parents at home full time? Are they giving up a lot of their retirement money in order to care for family? Are they burning out? And what does actual burnout look like? Well, it's chronic exhaustion. It's being very irritable. It's feeling trapped. It's a decline in your own health and feeling bouts of depression or anxiety. And if this is you, please know feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean that you don't love your family. It just means that you're carrying too much for too long. And so I have been thinking about you guys a lot, and me, and knowing that there's so many of us Gen Xers out there doing exactly this, I started thinking, okay, what can actually help these caregivers? And what I have found is that any kind of formal care will help. Things like assisted living or memory care facilities or respite care, having somebody come in and look after your family member while you take a break or go deal with your stuff. Because even small little breaks can help. Sharing responsibility with other family members, it doesn't have to be your siblings. And even though I was determined I was going to be the one to look after my mom, because remember, I've been doing this for 10 years. I got to the point where I thought, you know what, Lisa, you can't do it all. So I started incorporating the help of my uncle. He lived in the same town as my mom. I would get him to take mom to specific doctor's appointments because up to that point, I would take the day off work and go see mom and go do all of her medical appointments in one day if I could. But they just get to be too numerous. And so I finally just said, you know what, Lisa, accept the help. And sometimes those people aren't available to us, but we just need to know that we're not alone. So support groups can be helpful. And a lot of them are online because they know that we don't have the time to be leaving home to go to a support group. So they tend to be online so people can access this help from home. There's Alzheimer's organizations to help you out with different ideas of how to help your elderly parent, even how to talk to them. Because I was surprised at how many people would try to correct their parent, when their memory was failing. what's the point? They're not going to remember it. They won't remember your correction. So just go with the flow. And if they say if their husband is still alive, just say, yep, yeah, he's just out shopping. He'll be home soon, because there's no point in upsetting them. I think one of the hardest lessons we need to learn is to accept our limits. We are only human and we cannot do all of it. And trying to will actually destroy your health. And then what are you going to do? So I think it's almost like that commercial where they say, know your limits and stay within it. Kind of like that, except you're dealing with family members. So, and I'm talking about both sides, right? Do you have to babysit every single time that you are asked? Do you have to be the one that takes your parent to every single appointment? And I know we want to be that person who can do it all, and maybe you can, but just pay close attention to what your body is telling you, okay? And don't be afraid to accept help when it's offered or even ask for it. I think that for us Gen Xers, many of us thought that life would slow down once the kids were grown. We're getting into retirement. Oh my goodness. But for many of us, a whole new chapter of responsibility begins. And personally, I'm so grateful that I was able to retire a little bit earlier. So now I have a little more time to be able to look after my mom. And I'm grateful that she's able to receive that care that she needs. I'm grateful for the time that I get to look after my grandkids. But I also know that there are many of you out there who are carrying this responsibility alone. So if you are part of that sandwich generation, please let me know. Please know you are not the only one feeling the weight of this. And if you are part of that sandwich generation, heck, if you are part of the club sandwich generation, I'd be really curious to hear about your experience. And what are you doing that helps you the most? Because maybe we can create a bank of ideas here to help each other out. And if this video resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing, because it does help small channels like mine. In the meantime, I wish you all the best. Have a wonderful day.